Let's take a look at the first stanza of Hardy's poem, The Voice. Woman much missed, how you called to me, saying that now you are not as you were when you had changed from the one who was all to me, but as at first, when our day was fair. Now there's a whole range of poetic technique that we could talk about here. For example, alliteration, woman much missed. The repeated M sounds there give a unity to that little expression, woman much missed, and focus our attention on it, emphasizing how much he misses the woman. Another technique we could talk about is repetition. Call to me, the way that the repetition creates a sort of echo effect, that she keeps on calling. And that echo effect is, of course, picked up even more strongly in the three-syllable rhyme that we get with call to me rhyming with all to me. But what I want to focus on here is two of these techniques, one of them being the rhyme and the other being the rhythm. So let's see what we've got here. If you don't understand what I'm doing at first, don't worry, I'll explain it a little bit further along the line, but let me just get the basic information up here. Woman much missed how you called to me, saying that now you are not as you were when you had changed from the one who was all to me, but as at first, when our day was fair. So let me try and explain what I've done here. Let's just see how I've marked the rhythm. You can see that there's one slanting line there, and two little cup-like shapes, and then a downward stroke, a big downward stroke. Each set like this is what's called a foot. This first foot shows the first three syllables of the poem. Woman much, strong weak, dum-dee-dee. Okay? And that pattern gets repeated. Woman much, missed how you, strong weak, dum-dee-dee. And that same pattern is repeated again and again through that first stanza. Woman much missed how you called to me, dum-dee-dee, 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 saying that now you are not as you were. Now there, it changes, doesn't it? We've got a short foot with just one strong syllable at the end of the second line. So the basic rhythm for those two lines is dum-dee-dee, 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 dum. Woman much missed how you called to me, saying that now you are not as you were. And we would expect that rhythm to be repeated in the second half of the stanza. So what happens? Woman much missed how you called to me, saying that now you are not as you were, when you had changed from the one who was all to me, but as at first, when our day was fair. Now, if you've been listening carefully to this, you may notice that something a little bit strange is happening at the end of the stanza. Our day was fair. Can you see that there's a weak syllable missing there? Instead of dum-dee-dee-dum, it ends on dum-dee-dum. Day was fair. So, although the second line is dum-dee-dee, 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 dum, saying that now you are not as you were, the fourth line is dum-dee-dee, dum-dee-dee, dum-dee-dum. But as at first, when our day was fair. Okay, so now let's take a look at the rhyme scheme. The way we do this is we take the end of the first line, call to me, and we call it A. And then if the next line is the same, we would also call it A. But it's different, saying that now you are not as you were. So it ends with something that doesn't rhyme with the first line, so we call that B. And then the third line, when you had changed from the one who was all to me, well, that does rhyme with call to me, so we call that one A. It's actually a 3-syllable rhyme. And then in the last line, but as at first when our day was fair, well, I'm putting that as a B, but it's not exactly the same as were. It's what we call a half rhyme. So we've got a basic pattern here, but it doesn't seem to be perfect. There seem to be two little things that don't quite play out properly. So why is that? We could just say Hardy isn't very good at rhythm and he isn't very good at rhyme, and he just couldn't get it right. But another approach would be to say, no, this guy knows what he's doing, and he has intentionally introduced these irregularities into the pattern. Suppose he had done it on purpose. What would the reason be? Well, the two slight irregularities focus on the word fair. The half rhyme is on fair, and the missing syllable in the rhythm comes just before fair. So far, the poem has a rather negative feel to it. The woman is missed, and so there's a feeling of absence. And there is also the complicated timeline, as the woman says she is not as she was when she had changed, and that she is as at first. Complication is often a way of expressing something negative. Readers are naturally puzzled, and that puzzlement can create a sense of anxiety. So the word fair stands out in contrast to the sense of absence and anxiety created in the first stanza. By emphasizing this word, the poet indicates that the atmosphere of the poem is about to change. If you want to be technical about it, each repeated pattern is called a foot, and each line of this poem has basically 4 feet. The pattern of one strong syllable followed by 2 weak ones is called a dactyl. And the dactylic pattern is punctuated by a single strong syllable at the end of the 2nd and 4th lines. But rather than getting all the technical names right, the most important thing is to learn to appreciate the effect of the technique, that is, the relationship between the technique and the tone and sense of the poem. So let's take a look at the middle part of the poem. Can it be you that I hear? Let me view you then, standing as when I drew near to the town where you would wait for me, yes, as I knew you then, even to the original air-blue gown. Or is it only the breeze, in its listlessness, travelling across the wet mead to me here, you being ever dissolved to one wistlessness, heard no more again, far or near? So this middle part of the poem is fairly straightforward. Hardy contrasts the happy past in the 2nd stanza with the unhappy present in the 3rd stanza. It's worth noting that the rhythm of the last line is irregular in both stanzas. In the 2nd stanza, you've got these crowded syllables suggesting the poet's excitement as he waits for his love to arrive. Dum-dee-dee-dee-dum, dee-dee-dum-dee-dum, even to the original air-blue gown. It's as if, in his excitement, he can't get the words out quickly enough. And then, in the 3rd stanza, we've got missing syllables. Dum-dee-dum-dee-dee-dum-dee-dum, heard no more again far or near. These suggest that the woman's voice is fading away in death. They emphasize the lack, the absence of the woman. And then the final stanza. Thus I, faltering forward, leaves around me falling, wind oozing thin through the thorn from norward, and the woman calling. In this last stanza, the dactylic rhythm breaks down almost completely. The key word here is faltering. Just as the poet falters as he walks through the bleak countryside, so the rhythm falters, kind of breaks down. And the poet can also be seen as faltering in a broader sense. He's feeling his way hesitantly towards the future and, presumably, his own death. In this last stanza, the focus of the poem switches from the woman to the poet himself. And in terms of technique, the change is marked not only by this change in rhythm that we've noticed, but also by a switch from the alternating 1 and 3 syllable rhymes to 2 syllable rhymes. So we go from call to me, all to me, view you then, knew you then, listlessness, wistlessness in the odd lines, and were, fair, town, gown, here, near in the even lines of the poem, to 2 syllable rhymes, forward, norward, falling and calling. The bottom line here is that it's not just the technique that's important. We need to know how the technique functions in order to help to develop the atmosphere, the tone, and even the meaning of the poem.